This is the second video in a series on the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. This series is not intended to glorify or promote violence. Rather, the strategies and examples given will encompass all manner of human conflict. Throughout this series, I will describe each strategy while providing examples from popular film and television shows. Some of these depictions will have historical relevance, although fictionalized. These depictions are not meant to be taken 100% factually accurate, but more as examples to help you learn the strategies of war. Strategy 2. Guerrilla War of the Mind. What most often weighs you down and brings you misery is the past, in the form of unnecessary attachments, repetitions of tired formulas, and the memory of old victories and defeats. Robert Greene. Part 1. Don't fight the last war. For centuries, the greatest advantage in warfare was a strong cavalry. One of the most important elements of warfare, even today, is still mobility. Prior to the industrial age, this meant a people's ability to train and ride horses. Although several other beasts of burdens have been used throughout the history of warfare, no animal is a greater platform for a soldier than a horse. For centuries, the nomadic horse tribes of Eurasian steppe were a constant threat to established kingdoms that did not keep trained cavalry in their standing armies. This tradition would continue well into the 20th century, when the tried-and-true tactic of a mountain cavalry charge would finally meet its match against the might of reliable, sustained rifle fire. There were many ill-fated cavalry charges in the First World War, such as the one depicted in the 2011 film War Horse.
Out and we could slide in behind the German lines and come at them from the south at Guerrilla.
Excellent. Numbers?
About 600 infantry.
Twice our size.
Regiments of horse and men, the advantage is ours.
In this film, we see that the mounted troops still have the ability to catch an unaware dismounted unit off guard. However, once the charge runs into entrenched troops in prepared positions with machine gun support, there is no contest. The advantage that mounted troops had for thousands of years had finally come to an end. In the 1997 film, Private Parts, loosely based on the real-life career of radio shock jock Howard Stern, we see that Stern, unlike his competition, has no nostalgic attachment to the plain and mundane talk radio programs of the past.
This came from the FCC. Did you say testicles on the air?
Wait a second. Screw the FCC.
We just lost Muffler Man.
Hold on, we have a real problem here,
I'm just
Howard.
trying to get ratings.
I am just trying to run a radio.
Where other radio programs are still playing it safe, Stern, instead, is constantly trying to go over the line and cause a stir in his
Now you're
audience.
getting a look at a live broadcast of the Howard Stern Show.
And you're licking whipped cream off a kielbasa and you're putting it in your mouth and you're jamming the kielbasa all the way down your throat. Oh my God, look at that. The entire kielbasa is going down. She has swallowed it.
By giving them something they never expected to hear. He eventually climbs to the charts to become the top radio personality in the country.
Stern fan listens for, are you ready for this? An hour and 20 minutes.
How can that be?
Answer most commonly given, I want to see what he'll say next.
The reason for his success has more to do with his competitors. They had fallen behind the times. They had failed to live up to the moment that they were living in. They were still romanticizing the days of old radio, like the military commanders and their horses.
What about the people who hate Stern?
Good point. The average Stern hater listens for 2.5 hours a day.
Look, but if they hate him, why do they listen?
Most common answer, I want to see what he'll say next.
Stern grew up knowing what radio of the past was like, but had the notion that it could be so much more. He didn't cling to the past, he looked at the present and dragged radio into the future along with him. Today, you'll probably find personalities like him in every major radio and television market, and on every corner of the internet today, using his model of saying outlandish things to garner attention. Part 2. The Present War. You must consciously wage war against the past and force yourself to react to the present moment. Be ruthless on yourself. Do not repeat the same tired methods. Robert Greene. In the fictionalized films of the Rocky franchise, the titular character, Rocky Balboa, played by Sylvester Stallone, faces off against many worthy and sometimes superior opponents in every film.
Dead meat.
Starting in the second installment of the franchise, Rocky learns from his coach Mickey, played by Burgess Meredith, that he can't use the same methods he used previously to fight Apollo Creed.
You gotta change everything. You gotta learn to be a right-handed fighter. Now this'll confuse Apollo, and it'll protect that bad eye.
In order to protect his now weaker left eye, he has to learn to fight right-handed. This will not only protect his vulnerable side, but also throw off his opponent, who's expecting him to fight left-handed, as he has before.
Rocky's holding that right hand, but he's fighting right-handed. I don't believe it. The Southpaw still is fighting right-handed.
Rocky's fictionalized career of change and growth mirrors that of Japan's greatest swordsman, Miyamoto Musashi, author of the Book of the Five Rings. Musashi fought in many duels and won them all. In all his duels, he tried never to use the same tactic, and sometimes changed weapons and fighting styles altogether. Early in his career, he defeated and killed 2 members of the Yoshika family. In both duels, he had shown up late to anger his opponents. Then, when he faced the 3rd member of the family, he decided to show up very early and hide in nearby trees. When his opponent showed up with a small party set to ambush him, counting on him to be late, they set an ambush for him. However, it was Musashi who had the upper hand. By taking them by surprise and unprepared, he defeated them all. Years later, Musashi was set to fight a great samurai known for using a long sword. This time, he opted to arrive late, hours late, and by boat. And instead of a sword, he brandished a sharpened oar that was even longer than his opponent's famous sword. Both his tardiness and his choice of unusual weapon threw his enemy off balance. Musashi handily defeated him, and would from then on be known as a swordsman without peer. Musashi never stopped looking for the advantage, and was never rooted in one tactic or weapon. He would arrive late, then early, then very late, then very early. He would fight many men with a traditional weapon, then single opponents with 2 weapons, or just an oar. His enemies never knew what to expect from him. In the 2011 film Moneyball, based on the non-fiction book of the same name by Michael Lewis, Brad Pitt plays Billy Beane, former baseball player turned manager of the underfunded and struggling Major League Baseball team, the Oakland A's.
The problem we're trying to solve is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. It's an unfair game.
Unhappy with his team's performance and the uneven way the league handles financing and recruitment, Billy Beane begins to encourage outside-the-box thinking. He hires statisticians who are not hung up on the old statistics, such as batting average, runs batted in, etc.
People are overlooked for a variety of biased reasons and perceived flaws. Age, appearance, personality. Bill James and mathematics cut straight through that.
The new thinking brings resistance from the older scouts, coaches, and players, who would rather continue with their old tactics.
We want you to play first base for the Oakland A's.
Okay, well, but the thing is,
You don't know how to play first base. Scott?
That's right.
It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
Hey, anything worth doing is, and we're gonna teach you.
But the team goes on a record-breaking 20-game winning streak that year, and becomes a contender in the AL West title. The new recruiting tactics are eventually adopted by other major teams and go on to become industry standard. Part 3. Reverse course. Sometimes, you must force yourself to strike out in a new direction, even if it involves risk. What you may lose in comfort and security, you will gain in surprise. Make it harder for your enemies to tell what you will do. Wage guerrilla war on your mind, allowing no static lines of defense, no exposed citadels. Make everything fluid and mobile. Robert Greene. In the 2002 film We Were Soldiers, based on the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young, about the historical battle of the Idrang Valley, written by Lieutenant General Hal Moore and Joseph Galloway, both of whom were present at the battle. In the film, Hal Moore, played by Mel Gibson, is is in charge of the 7th Cavalry Regiment, the Army's first air assault unit.
Welcome to the new cavalry. We will ride into battle, and this will be our horse.
The premise of the new unit was to utilize the relatively new helicopter technology to create a more mobile fighting unit, one that could operate in remote areas and then deploy quickly as needed. This was one of the first major engagements of the Vietnam War. Some of the tactics being deployed were new and required refinement while in the field. The use of the new technology and the speed at which the soldiers were able to deploy and resupply themselves set the Vietnamese army back. They were used to fighting the colonial forces of the French that would operate on foot patrols, without close air support or the ability to resupply. Both sides would learn a lot from this engagement.
All right, get that! Get the wounded on! Come on, bring them on!
In the final scenes of the film, we get a glimpse of what the Vietnamese army's tactics would be going forward. At the beginning of the engagement, they had hoped to draw out their enemy into the valley where they would be exposed and defeat them there.
What do you estimate the enemy strength?
We appraise our numbers as manageable, Colonel.
Simple orders, Hal. Find the enemy and kill him.
The American enemies, however, fought extremely hard for the valley, and the battle ended in a tactical victory for the Americans. However, there is no strategic value to the valley for either side. At the end of the battle, the Americans left, and so did the Vietnamese forces. From then on, this would be the tactic of the Vietnamese to draw the Americans out into fights in places of their choosing, where they can attack and then retreat. Neither side would hold ground. This was not necessary. The Vietnamese would draw out the conflict until it was no longer sustainable to continue the war. What Le Drang showed the Vietnamese was that Americans were a mobile force that would travel to their fights and then return to their bases. That meant that they could be drawn into engagements where the enemy was determined to fight, and if they didn't want to fight somewhere, they would simply leave, which resulted in both forces flowing around the country like a river trying to find its own source. Part 4. The Keys to Warfare. Re-examine past beliefs and principles.
Did you think that a garrison on open ground would go undefended? Look at yourself! Who do you think you are?
Erase the memory of the last war. Keep moving forward.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Absorb the spirit of the times.
I gotta tell you something. I know a lot of you out there really love this music, but I just don't get it. Explain it to me. And maybe it's because I went to college and I never drove a truck and had sex with my daddy's sister, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I quit. I think I quit.
Reverse course.
David, you're 37. How about you and I be honest about what each of us want out of this? Now, I'm not paying you for the player you used to be. I'm paying you for the player you are right now. You're smart. You get what we're trying to do here. Make an example for the younger guys. Be a leader.
The reversal. Now that you know you should not be fighting the last war, you must realize that your enemy may be doing the same thing. Any strategy, if taken to one extreme or another, could be detrimental to obtaining your goals. As stated, always trying to reimagine the tactics that you are using in battle is a good thing. But you must imagine your enemy is doing the same. Never let yourself think that your enemy is not seeing the same mistakes you are. Hal Moore reimagined how an infantry unit can fight with the aided benefit of air transportation and close air support. But his enemy noticed this too and adjusted accordingly. You should always expect your enemy to surprise you, just as you expect to surprise your enemy. This has been a production of Minimum Effort Media. There are new video essays here on the first Friday of every month. If you would like to own a copy of the 33 Strategies of War, you can do so by using the Amazon link in the description below. I am also giving away a copy of the book with each video on the 33 Strategies of War I release between now and December of 2022. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber with notifications turned on, like the video, and leave a comment below. I will pick the comments at random from each one of my videos, and I will post the winners on the first Friday of December. You can reach out to me at The Lazy Stoic across all social media. Thank you for watching.